It was August 1587. A group of about 115 people from England arrived and began settling on an island near what is now North Carolina. In this new land, they faced many difficulties, one of which was the constant supply of life's necessities. Therefore, the governor of this small settlement, John White, decided to return to England to bring back food, drink, and other essential supplies. However, upon his return, John White encountered numerous challenges, and when he finally made it back to the island 3 years later, no one was there. This was one of Britain's earliest attempts to colonize the New World, a daring gamble that would end in complete mystery. What exactly happened to these 115 settlers? Why did they vanish without a trace from Roanoke Island? And why does their disappearance remain unsolved after more than 4 centuries? Today, we're investigating America's oldest cold case. In 1578, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, England launched its ambitious colonial project in North America, seeking to replicate Spain's lucrative conquests in Central and South America, where vast reserves of gold and silver had been discovered. The English crown hoped to find similar mineral wealth while establishing strategic settlements that could provide valuable commodities like tobacco and timber, resources that were becoming increasingly vital to England's economic and naval ambitions. This colonization effort formed part of a broader geopolitical struggle, as England competed with Spain, France, and the Netherlands for global influence during this age of European expansion and empire building. In 1584, the responsibility for this task was entrusted to Sir Walter Raleigh. He was given 7 years to accomplish this mission, meaning it had to be completed by 1591. Since Walter had limited time, he immediately arranged a sea voyage to assess the situation in North America and find a suitable place for settlement. This expedition included a few individuals aboard 2 ships. The sea journey began on April 27, 1584, from England, and concluded on July 13 at an island named Hatteras, which is now part of the American state of North Carolina. The men sent by Walter landed on this island, and the local Native Americans did not react negatively to their arrival. Instead, they treated them well. These Native Americans were from the Secatan tribe. This tribe controlled not only this island but also several nearby islands, including Roanoke Island. And it was this very island where Britain later attempted to establish its first settlement in North America. When these men returned to England, they recounted their successful journey to Walter and also spoke of the hospitality of the locals. Bolstered by these encouraging reports, England moved decisively to establish its first permanent colony in North America. Recognizing the urgent need to stake their claim before rival European powers, particularly Spain with its already flourishing American empire, English planners envisioned replicating Spanish successes. The prospect of discovering vast deposits of gold and silver, mirroring Spain's legendary wealth from Mexico and Peru, now appeared tantalizingly within reach. This dream of New World riches, combined with the strategic imperative to secure valuable resources and trade routes, fueled England's colonial ambitions during this pivotal era of expansion. Why did the British choose Roanoke Island for their first North American colony? Roanoke Island was geographically very important and relatively secure. It was located in the Atlantic Ocean at a spot where Spanish trade ships frequently passed by. Britain could easily monitor these ships. There were also rumors that the island had deposits of gold and silver. Therefore, Britain decided to establish its settlement on this very island. On April 9, 1585, a fleet of 6 small and large ships set sail. This voyage included 600 people. According to the plan, half of them were to stay on the island, while the rest would be sent back to England. A British explorer, Ralph Lane, was appointed as the governor of this potential colony. After enduring the hardships of the sea journey, the fleet finally arrived at Roanoke Island in August 1585. During this voyage, the English also seized 2 Spanish ships they encountered along the way. During this journey, some of Britain's ships sank in the sea, resulting in the loss of much of the food and supplies that were meant to be used after establishing the colony. Considering the shortage of rations, it was decided that only 100 people would remain on the island, and the rest would return. The English first began searching for gold and silver deposits on the island, but found nothing except disappointment. Winter was approaching and food supplies were nearly exhausted. These 100 people were surviving by obtaining fish and corn from nearby local tribes. The situation took a turn when the chief of the Croatoan tribe, who lived on the island, fell ill. Soon, more members of the tribe began falling sick. The tribe believed that this illness had been brought by the English. The chief became fiercely opposed to them and boycotted them. Now, their survival became even more difficult. Fortunately, a British naval officer and explorer, Sir Francis Drake, was passing through the same sea route on his way back to England when the British settlers on the island sought his help. The immigrant English governor Ralph Lane informed him of the entire situation, and thus, in July 1586, after nearly a year on the island, all these individuals returned to England aboard the naval officer's ship. Despite the failure of the first attempt, Walter did not lose heart. This time, he entrusted the task to his close associate John White, and it was decided that instead of settling on Roanoke again, they would try to establish a settlement in a new location, because the local inhabitants had become strongly opposed to the British. This time, 115 people agreed to join the mission. They were all middle-class Londoners, and this time, women and children were also part of the group. On May 8, 1587, the sea journey began with 3 ships. According to the plan, they were supposed to land at Chesapeake Bay, but by mistake, the British ships once again arrived at Roanoke. Upon reaching the island, the settlers found nothing except the broken belongings of the previous English inhabitants. They tried to re-establish relations with the locals, but received no positive response. In fact, the natives killed a lone Englishman they found. It was then decided that John White would return to Britain to inform the Queen of the situation. On August 27, 1587, White left behind all the British settlers, including his own daughter, son-in-law, and their newborn granddaughter, and set sail for England. He had no idea that this would be the last time he would see them, and that by the time he returned, one of history's greatest mysteries would have taken place. When John White reached Britain, tensions between Spain and England had escalated, and sea travel was banned. At that time, there were no airplanes, so White remained stuck in Britain for 3 years. What happened to the British settlers on Roanoke during these 3 years? This is the question that remains unanswered to this day. 3 years later, on August 18, 1590, when John White returned to the island, he found no trace of any human presence. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that the area where the British had settled was now fenced off with wooden barriers. None of the settlers' belongings were there, only the broken huts they had lived in. However, the words CRO and CROATOAN, Croatoan, were carved into trees all around. White assumed that the settlers had relocated to the nearby Croatoan island. He wanted to go there, but his ship required immediate repairs, forcing him to return to England. Walter believed that the settlers had moved to another location. He refused to accept that he had failed once again in his efforts. Finally, in 1597, all the English settlers who had gone to Roanoke were declared dead. Walter was not ready to admit defeat, so he continued searching for the settlers, though without success. In 1603, he was arrested on charges of conspiring against King James. What happened to these people after John White left? This is one of history's greatest unanswered questions. Only speculations exist. In 1603, an English sailor, Bartholomew Gilbert, set out with his team to search for the settlers. During the journey, a storm forced them to stop at an unknown location where Gilbert was killed by the locals. Some experts believe that the British settlers on Roanoke were also killed by the natives, or that they perished in a famine. From the beginning, Spain had been monitoring the movements of the English settlers. They feared that the British would establish a foothold in North America, which was unacceptable to Spain. There were even rumors that the British had discovered diamonds on Roanoke. Consequently, Spanish forces were actively pursuing the British settlers. However, according to some historians, Spain also found no trace of them. Perhaps they arrived at Roanoke after the British had already abandoned their first failed attempt at settlement. Roanoke Island still exists today, with a population of around 7,000. Investigations into this historical event continue in some form even now. At the British Museum in London, there is a map drawn by John White himself. On this map, 2 forts are marked with invisible ink, one of them located about 50 miles from Roanoke Island. In 2015, experts examined this site and, during excavations, found some items used by the English settlers, though no fort as depicted on the map was discovered. Similarly, digging around the area yielded some old British utensils. However, we cannot say with certainty whether the settlers relocated there, as this area was a stronghold of Native American tribes, making it dangerous for the British to settle. Some speculate that the Native Americans killed the settlers and took their belongings. The truth remains a mystery, and what actually happened to those people can only be guessed at. The disappearance of Roanoke settlers remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. What do you think happened to these pioneering English colonists? Did they fall victim to hostile forces, attempt to resettle elsewhere, or perhaps even assimilate with local tribes? Share your theories in the comments below. Did you like this story about England's first American colony? Hit the like button and share with friends who love history. Don't forget to subscribe. We share more exciting stories about how countries competed for power in the New World and other real-life mysteries from history.